Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So tonight, I want to take a look at, some of the discussions, or maybe one particular discussion that was going on social networks. Like during and a little bit after the 2024 Paris Olympics. I know that, it's been almost a week since it ended, but so much material that I could cover that have to do with Brazil's participation in the Olympics, as well as how the Olympics and the Brazilian participation in the Olympics, is kind of like a, I don't know, microcosm of how Brazilian society deals with, representation and race and these type of things that, for decades, the country has insisted that these type of separations, segregation, and, discrimination, they denied for, quite frankly, a long time that these type of ideologies even existed in Brazil. But, there's no way to hide it anymore. It's been exposed out in the open for a number of years now. Social media has just, it's just put on display what Black Brazilians have been saying about Brazilian society for decades, if not, we say over a century, maybe more. I mean, dating all the way back to the slavery era in Brazil. So anyway, today's video, I'm calling it, "While Black Brazilians Celebrate Olympic Triumphs of Black Athletes, White Brazilians ask, why can't they all just be Brazilians?" So anyway, gonna cover a few things here. Just like I said, the discussion that was going on online, because this isn't the first time this has come up. So before I get into the video for today, definitely like this video, share this video, consider subscribing to the channel, click on the notification bell so that you'll know when I put up new videos. And with that said, let me get into the video for today. First, I always like to put it into a little context first for, for my viewers who may not be familiar with the situation in Brazil. So anyway, the reason why I'm covering this video, actually this post that I saw, is, what it speaks, what it says about Brazilian society. A lot of people feel that, the ascension of Black Brazilians bothers people. We've seen a general ascension of Black Brazilians over the last, decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, going back to when we started really seeing changes and starting to see Black Brazilians in areas they were not expected to be for the most of the history of the country. But, affirmative action brought some of those opportunities that they hadn't had, ever in history before. And, the success of Black Brazilians, it bothers some. I'm not saying the whole country, but I'm saying there are enough voices online. And these voices have always existed that says, Black people belong in a certain place. Why are they here? So when you punch up this, just certain keywords, you'll see what this means. All of these articles that I'm looking at right now, it says successful Black people bother racists, right? The hate towards the social ascension of Blacks. Why the success of these Black women bothers so many people, or just bothers, why does it bother people so much? The success of Black people bothers people in Brazil, says actress Zize Mota. We see a global journalist proved the success of Blacks on TV bothers people. Okay. These are all basically talking about the same theme. The idea that right here, the racist is bothered with the success of Black people. I can't see who made that quote. But anyway, all of these different articles here, they basically are saying the same thing. Brazil has always denied that it was racist. But then it seems like, as long as Black people stay in their quote unquote place, they can at least just deal with it, because that's where Black people, according to Brazilian society standards, that's where they're supposed to be. Now, when Black people start ascending into areas of society where they're not supposed to be, that's when, how uncomfortable people feel with this starts to come out. So again, the 2024 Paris Olympics just ended. And we saw a number of Brazilians in general who took medals, gold, silver, and bronze. What we saw was that of the individual medals that Brazilians won, like I think it was like 9 out of 15 were Black people. Whether they were, well, we're talking about individual sports here. So 9 out of the 15 individual medals went to Black Brazilians. Now, these are just some pictures of overall winners uh, in the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris that just ended. And again, this speaks volumes. I said this in a previous video that it says a lot that the ascension of Black Brazilians has happened, and we see a symbol of this ascension in the 2024 Olympics. We saw something like this in the previous Olympics in Tokyo as well. Um, the Brazilian phrase "Nós somos todos iguais" is something that Brazilians have said for a long time. Whenever a Black person speaks about how racist the country is, here's somebody saying "Nós somos todos iguais," which means we're all equal. Why are you guys talking about that? This is a phrase that you'll find throughout Brazilian society. It's ingrained in the society, that we're all equal. But there's when you start looking and just understanding how people see these things, and it's like, do you really think we're all equal? Or are you just saying that to deflect accusations of racism? Here's a number of articles that I've done. Can we finally put this fallacious phrase to rest? These 7 women explain why it is racist to say that we're all equal in a society that is so unequal in terms of race. Do Brazilians really believe that we're all equal? Actress Thais Araújo is the latest victim of racist attacks on the internet. And it goes on and on. I would always see this whenever, some racist incident will come along, somebody would immediately jump and be like, well, we're all equal. Well, where's all of that where's all that equality when they're insulting Black Brazilians, right? The other thing that shows how Brazilian society deals with Black people are the many sayings that any Brazilian can tell you in society. Sayings such as negros de alma branca, which means Black people who have a quote unquote white soul, which is to say that if a Black person if they don't fall according to the stereotypes, then they must have whiteness in their soul. Because if if they behave a certain way, if they speak a certain way, if they have a certain education, well, they're no longer Black. If they don't look white, they must have a white soul. So, you're always going to discredit Blackness. If it's something good, then they must have a white soul, right? But then you have other sayings that says, o branco correndo é atleta, negro correndo ladrão, which means, a white man running or a white athlete running is an athlete, while a black person running is a thief. Then you have the saying that says, tinha que ser preto, which means it had to be a Black person. Whenever somebody does something wrong, if it's something negative, then it just had to be a Black person. All right. Another popular saying, let me see, all of these you can find online. Obviously I've known about these for some years. Okay. So for example, tinha que ser preto, it had to be a Black person. If it's something that happened bad, it had to have been a Black person who was involved, basically what that's saying. Negros de alma branca, if they did well, if they're well-spoken, if they're intelligent, if they're educated, if they're beautiful, they must have a white soul. Preto de alma branca, kind of like, I don't know, like an Oreo cookie or something. Then this is one of my favorites, right? Preto quando não faz cagada na entrada, faz na saída, which means that if a Black person doesn't crap on the way in, they crap on the way out. Right. And I could have used the SH word, but you get what the message is here. This is saying, Black people are always going to make some type of a mess. All these articles, this is a glossary of terms to avoid racist expressions. And Brazil is full of these type of sayings. Anybody in Brazil who grew up in Brazil will be familiar with these phrases, which is the reason why today's video was necessary, that I had to cover this. So this was something that came out of an Instagram post. It might have been during the Olympics or just a little bit after the Olympics had ended. And again, I'm calling this video "While Black Brazilians Celebrate Olympic Triumphs of Black Athletes, White Brazilians Ask Why Can't They All Be Just Brazilians." So this is what the Leituras Pretas page had to say about this, and it says, in recent days, with all the repercussions of the Olympics and their main characters, the internet, and especially here in our direct messages and comments on posts, has been questioning the reason why we emphasize that Black people have stood out and made it to the podium. Of course, this is a now famous picture of the two American gymnasts, basically giving Rebecca Andrade her flowers after she won the gold in a big event. All right. So it continues. First of all, let's talk about the obvious. Laugh out loud. The page is called Pretitudes or Blacknesses. And we always try to report on this topic. I'm kind of curious about, it is apparently it might have been a dual effort by Leituras Pretas, Black readings, and Pretitudes, Blackness. Maybe they collaborated on this because they're saying the page is called Pretitudes. They deal with Black issues. And we always try to report on this topic. Second, it is important and necessary that these mentions are made. We should not and will not erase something so important in the history of Brazilian sports. Everything that surrounds us is racialized, and or should know, the weight of this. Questions or attempts to empty our speeches only show how much you still run away from this conversation. And I say that it is an escape and not a lack of preparation, because you are indeed ready for this. You just don't want it. So they're calling out Brazilian society, saying, "Hey, let's have this discussion." It's not that you're not prepared to have this discussion. You just don't want to. Okay. So this is Bia Souza. She won the first gold for, in an individual event in the 2024 Olympics for Brazil. And the question here says, why emphasize that Bia Souza, a judoka, a judo artist, and gold in the Olympics? Why do you have to emphasize that she's Black? Someone in the comments says, "Excuse me, but I don't understand why you mentioned that she is Black. I mean, after all, we are all women, and just that, we are all equal." Okay, again, we are all equal. Why Black men and Black women? I don't understand. Right. So these are some of the comments that people are talking about, because I want to point out that this isn't the first time this has come up. I'm going to put this in context in a minute. The purpose of this page, as we said in the bio, is to bring information, learning. That's why, for example, we have courses and lightness. Guys, sometimes it's just a meme, and that's okay. And that's why we bring here in the post some reading suggestions for you. They pointed out some books for people to further dive into this topic. For a long time, white people had opportunities that did not and do not reach Black women. The stories of Rebecca Andrade, Simone Biles, and so many others are marked by race. In countries that impoverish the Black population, they do not give them opportunities. And as Viola Davis has already said, what separates Black women from success is opportunity. They are Black women who, despite all the racism, managed to be there and show that others can be there. So yes, we need to talk about race. In our country, the exclusion of Black people was a political project. The post-abolition period was marked by immigration policies that had the dual project of whitening the country and removing Black people from jobs and placing them in even more subordinate positions. And what does this have to do with the Olympics? Everything. The 19th and 20th centuries were marked by scientific racism that said that Black people were inferior. Remember that until 1900, Black people were not even allowed to play soccer. We need to learn more about these exclusion projects so that we do not fall into that myth that we are all equal. This idea masks racism and the history of struggle and resistance. We may be equal, but in Brazil, we do not have equal opportunities, and that is why we need to talk about race. Many white people are showing discomfort on social media because we are talking about Black medalists. For them, there is no reason to bring race into the subject. A couple of things I want to just go over real quick. In this area here, they're talking about the post-abolition period in Brazil, where the Brazilian government opened its borders to millions of European immigrants. The project said we want to whiten the country, not only just having white bodies in the country, because at that time, as the abolition of slavery was getting closer towards the end of the 19th century, Brazilian elites saw a majority non-white country, and they said, "We can't have this. It'll be embarrassing on the world stage. Nobody will take us serious as a country, So they brought in 4 million Italian, German, Portuguese, Spanish immigrants, to even up the population and to promote race mixing, so that eventually the darker elements of the society would disappear. So that's what they're talking about with whitening the country, and then removing Black people from jobs and placing them in even more subordinate positions. There's a book talking about Sao Paulo, for example, how instead of using the Black labor that already was there, because people were freed from slavery in 1888, they decided to block these people out of the job market and bring over European immigrants to replace that work. So this is what they're talking about in that particular part of the paragraph. So now we're going to talk some more about what are some of the things that people had to say when we talk about, okay, these are Black athletes who did this for the country. These are Black athletes who are representing Brazil. I want to point out that this is not the first time that this came about. When Rebecca Andrade competed in Tokyo, the Olympics in 2020, 2021, this is from 2021, the article that I put up. And it was this is the same topic that came up. Let me see here. Let's see. With all the obstacles that Rebecca overcame to enter the history books, one other aspect is being celebrated in Brazilian social media circles, the fact that Rebecca is a Black woman. We've already learned of the attitudes, gestures, and comments that previous world champion Daiane dos Santos dealt with in her rise to the champion circle. The reaction of Brazil's Black community symbolizes the changes in racial perspectives over the past few decades. So let me talk a little bit about Daiane dos Santos first. Let me see if I can find Daiane dos Santos was the first Black girl to win medals in a gymnastics competition in the World Championships for representing Brazil. She emerged at the end of the 90s and in the early 2000s. Daiane has a number of medals that she won. She was never able to secure a medal in the Olympics, unfortunately, but she has a number of gold, silver. In Brazil, in Portuguese, ouro is gold, prata is silver, and bronze, well, that's bronze. But you see all of the gold medals that she captured during her career. She was just never able to bring home a medal in 3 attempts in the Olympics. But people still see her for what she is. She opened up the gates. She opened up the doors that allow somebody like Rebecca Andrade to come along. Let me continue with what I was reading. Let's see, where is my article at? Okay, so Daiane dos Santos' victory is a triumph that Afro-Brazilians are claiming, and that goes beyond Brazil's usual "we are all equal," "we are all Brazilians" rhetoric that attempts to hide wide and persisting socioeconomic gaps between white and non-white Brazilians, as well as everyday racial bias. It's a tone that I also noticed at the end of the 2016 Olympics held in Rio de Janeiro when Rafaela Silva won a gold medal in judo. Okay. So look at this this comment by this girl named Jessica Rodriguez. She says, "I saw a white journalist writing a story saying that Rebecca, speaking of Rebecca Andrade, is pride and representation for all of us Latinos. That's why I hate this term. F you, man. She is the pride of Black people, of favela slum inhabitants. You cross the street when you see us, and when we win, you come with all of this about us Latinos." Speaking of racial politics and how they are playing out regarding Rebecca's victories, again, I note a rising polarization along lines of race that just a few decades ago didn't really seem to exist, at least not to this degree. I'm just saying that, these attitudes towards race have always existed in Brazil. It just seems to me that the more success Black Brazilians are having, the more blatant people are getting with how they feel about it. Okay, so let's look at a few of these. Now, remember, this is going on during the Olympics of Tokyo. These are some of the comments that people were posting. Okay, so here, a Black evangelical and peripheral woman is the first Brazilian athlete in history to win 2 Olympic medals in the same competition. But the choice of Baile de Favela is a song they complain about. Take a good look at Rebecca Andrade's face. She is the face of Brazil that these people have never supported. So listen to this next comment here. Rebecca Andrade is the first Brazilian, not the first Black Brazilian. That's it. No divisions. The next one says Rebecca Andrade is the first Brazilian, not the first Black Brazilian, as those playing the victim of African ancestry would say, to win 2 medals in a single edition of the Olympic Games. She made history and is a source of pride for Brazilians of all colors. Congratulations, Rebecca. Okay, so this is what we're seeing here. For ex-Big Brother participant Lucas Galina to remember that Rebecca Andrade is a Black woman performing funk. She did her routines to some funk music in 2021. In a country like Brazil is praising the wrong things, it is obvious that a white man like him would never understand the importance of this. Okay. So this is the conversation that was happening way back in the Olympics, way back, what, 4 years ago during the Tokyo Olympics. People were already speaking out saying, no, she's not the first Black Brazilian. She's the first Brazilian, right? So we can expect that these same comments would come about again, and that's exactly what we saw. So these are just some comments that were taken from online. First one says, so far Brazil's only 2 gold medals in Paris 2024 at that time have come from 2 Black women, Bia Souza and Rebecca Andrade. You are gigantic. The next comment comes here. Why do we always need to talk about people's skin color? It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is a Brazilian woman on top of the podium, Brazil's biggest medalist, right? So then TMNC, let me just say, you can take it up the, you know what, with this ridiculous speech about Black women. That's racism, you idiot. There are 2 Brazilian athletes who are Olympic champions, and that's it. How far does this talk about identity issues go? Disgusting. Congratulations, Rebecca and Bia. All right. So that's the comment here and the previous comment here. These people clearly have a problem with Black Brazilians exalting the victories of Black Brazilian athletes. The problem with that is all these years, when you want to exclude Black people is cool. When you want people representing Brazil, you want people who look whiter. So then this has been a long time coming for Black Brazilians because they have felt excluded from Brazilian society for decades and arguably centuries. So there's a fight going on about how people should be seen when they're representing Brazil. Black people are saying these are Black Brazilians. And then the non-Black Brazilians want to say, no, don't call them Black. They're just Brazilians. Okay. But the history of racism, even in sports, from that excluded Black people has a long history in Brazil. In 1900, the Ponte Preta team arrived with Miguel do Carmo, this guy right here. He's considered the first Black player. We had clubs like Bangu in 1911 that took up the fight over the decades, and until 1923, with the classic Vasco da Gama team, Black people were constantly prevented from playing soccer. That was only a century ago. It was no different in other sports. Having Black athletes does not mean that Brazil provides opportunities and is not racist. On the contrary, it shows stories of struggles to get there. So this has been going on for a while. So we should be able to understand why it is that Black Brazilians want to celebrate when they see Black athletes triumph. Look at this headline. 100 years ago, Black players were excluded from Brazil's Seleção, which is their national team. And this is going back 100 years. So we don't want any Black players representing Brazil, in the World Cup or on the world stage on the soccer team. Some white people are saying that it doesn't matter to say that they are Black, and I would like to say that it does matter. The sports space has always been racialized, and Black people have had a lot of difficulty in following through. In the case of artistic gymnastics, they advocated that Black women could not do it and justified it with scientific racism, saying that seus ossos eram pesados, meaning their bones were heavy. I had never heard that before. And it turns out this is not what they were just saying in Brazil. This is something that you can find online where they were talking about Black athletes or just Black people in the United States. Their bones are heavy. I had never heard that before. But apparently it's a phrase that you've heard to exclude Black athletes in Brazil as well as in the United States. So what are the people saying in the comment section? The first one is from popular actress Lucy Ramos. She says, yes, it does matter. The second comment says, thank you for quoting my tweet. Racism has no time to appear. When we win, we're not Black, but suffering state violence, there's no color. The third comment says, when the example is good, there's no need to mention color. When the example is bad, it had to be a Black, like the old saying says. Fourth comment, when it's wrong, it could only be a Black. When it shines, let's not talk about color. This is what the argument is here. 5, let's not forget everything Diana dos Santos went through here in Rio Grande do Sul, which is a state in the South where Diana dos Santos is from. I remember very well her mother saying that she had to even brush her teeth separately from her colleagues at a very famous gymnastics club here in Porto Alegre. Porto Alegre being the state capital of the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Long live the Black medalist. 6, it bothers them too much when they realize that it's not theirs to take the lead. Then they come up with this, we're all equal, the human race. I only see 2 women and not colors. Symptomatic, isn't it? 7 says, when it comes to racism, they know very well where to direct their hatred. When we win, they want to say that color doesn't matter. I just watch. Thank you for the post is number 8. Number 9, funny that it's always those who see themselves as white who make these comments. 10, those people today who are upset because we say they are Black athletes were the ones who in the past prevented Black athletes from participating in sports competitions, the old structural racism adopting itself to society. These are some book recommendations that they made on this post, just saying, look, if you're not familiar with the topic, take a look at a few of these books that talk about racism against Black Brazilians in sports, in society, Black Wave, White Fear, the genocide of the Black Brazilian, Black protagonism in Sao Paulo, the sociology of the Black Brazilian. You have racism in sport in Brazil, racism in Brazilian football, the negro, the Black in Brazilian football or soccer. So this is not new. Again, somebody suggested, like, you guys know the deal. Y'all just don't really want to, y'all don't want to have this discussion because you're wrong. You know what's really going on. It's just that we point it out and it makes you uncomfortable. Let me see, where was I? Now, speaking on Diana dos Santos, what the commenter said, she was talking about how people treated Diana dos Santos, this little Black girl participating in gymnastics. They just felt like she didn't belong there. Like, why don't you go and play a sport that's closer to your biotype, they would say. So it says on the national team, they didn't want to use the same bathroom as me. This is what Diana dos Santos said. Gold medal winning gymnast Diana dos Santos recalls incidents of racism. So this is what she was saying when she said that, Diana experienced, this is how they treated her when, you want this little Black girl on the Olympic or the gymnastics team. That's not a sport for Blacks, right? This article was just asking, how come Diana dos Santos never won an Olympic medal? And, Diana was extremely talented. Like I said, I showed you a few of the medals that she had won over the years. Unfortunately, she was just never able to come back with an Olympic medal, but it doesn't diminish her accomplishments. A lot of people see that, because of the path that she blazed, she opened up the door for people like Rebecca Andrade. Again, Brazilians winning their medals. Of course, we're all familiar with Rebecca Andrade. Now the whole world knows who she is. I remember some years ago in the Tokyo Olympics, it was just kind of thought like, well, Rebecca won medals because Simone Biles didn't participate. But now that we know, Rebecca has actually triumphed over Simone Biles in other gymnastics competitions, not just this one from the 2024 Paris Olympics. So anyway, I just wanted to present this video today because this is a discussion that's going on in Brazil. Black people ascend and race doesn't matter, but everything else that has something to do with Black people, is to be diminished. And now you got Black people representing Brazil on the global scale in the Olympics. And now they're all just Brazilians. They're not Black. Okay. So anyway, want to know what you guys thought about today's video. Drop a comment in the comment section, like this video, share this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on that notification bell so that you know when I put up a new video. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post.